It is 8 o'clock. I'll call our pre-agenda meeting to order. I'd like to remind everyone, including myself, to cut your cell phones off or cut them down. Our invocation today will be from Commissioner Daugherty. Pledge of Allegiance, Commissioner Chris Gurley. Approval of the minutes. Discussion of adjustment up to the agenda. Mr. Honeycutt, if you would take over.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have one thing that we would like to add, and we don't have new business, but we would like to put it under new business, is the discussion of a sewer rate increase. As the board is aware, we've, and through a lot of work through Commissioner Aycock, or Ms. Barbara Aycock, and all the work that she's done, working with our staff and looking at the rates, we are woefully behind. We are losing money, and this will hopefully stop the bleeding at some point, or at least start the process, so instead of a gusher, we don't have as much loss moving forward. We feel like this is probably the first step with respect to rate increases, but we wanted to go ahead and get this in play, and this was something the board asked for. So Kendall will be here to go over what the recommendation is as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would like to do that under new business. So that would be right after, I guess, the second public hearing.
Any commissioners got anything they need to add?
No, just a comment if I could. Thank you, Commissioner Aycock, for your efforts on this.
Thank you. Like I said, Janice and Kendall and his staff have been very helpful in this also. Thank y'all.
And thank you, Commissioner Daugherty. But when I won't call it a problem, but we've got a situation with two ACOTs on the board. Please make sure that, because Barbara's doing more work right now than I am, make sure that the right ACOT gets the credit for it.
One question about it. You know, you read the paper, I sent you the article where Goldsboro's probably going up 20%. Are we prepared when that happens?
We'll be looking at it for budget as well. Yes, ma'am. And then if the board's okay with that addition for new business after the second public hearing, there's then the appointment committee.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed it.
We ain't got one thing. Or actually two people for the same.
You want to go to the public hearings now, or just do it at 9 o'clock? Or?
We do have two public hearings today. One is to receive public comments on two corporate hangar ground leases with Al Oates. This will replace Stroke and Racing as the primary leaseholder, and Brandon Gray, our airport director, will be here at the 9 o'clock meeting if you have any questions about the leases and any changes that have been made.
Were there any changes from the lease that we had with the racing group? So basically it's just changing the name of the leaseholder.
There was some minor.
Good morning.
So it clarifies just a little bit. I believe the previous action that was taken by the board was for a lease up to 4 hangars, and it didn't really spell out exactly when all those hangars were going to be built. This clarifies it a little bit. So 3 of those hangars will be built within a year of execution, and then the tenant will have 1 more year to construct the 4th hangar. So it clarifies that, and then also it changes the leaseholder. There's some other technical specifications about some off-site areas that need to be leased, but Brandon would be in a better position to describe those.
And Then after that public hearing at 9:30, we'll have a public hearing to receive a public comments on a request to amend the Wayne County Subdivision Ordinance by adding Section 70-104H4 to require a second full-service access built to NCDOT standards for subdivisions with more than 100 lots with limited exceptions. And I do believe you also have some comment from David Perry on that he has submitted, and I think Mr. Perry will be here for comment as well.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, after the public hearing, it's my understanding that we're going to refer this back to the planning board.
That would be my recommendations, and I've talked to Barry, and Barry says that he feels confident that the planning board would be glad to, review it and see if we can hit a happy medium, because both sides has got valuable concerns. So if we can, probably send it back to the planning board, we don't want to, that's what we got a planning board for, is to make recommendations to us. But then again, I don't feel like they mind going back and looking at it and seeking it be tweaked a little bit and see can we come up with something with a happy medium. Is that good?
And Barry, could you kind of enlighten us a little bit in regards to some other options? And I spoke up at our last meeting that I knew there were some concerns out there because of the cost, undoubtedly. You go to a second entrance, it automatically is going to put a tremendous cost because you got to put a turning lane and all of the additional development costs there.
Right, that's true. Anytime you have a development amendment such as this, there is that potential for any sort of cost increase on a developer. And of course, anytime there's a cost increase, it could trickle down to the buyer as well. So those are definitely valid concerns, and I do understand that. There are potentially other options that I've heard of that we'd be glad to talk to the planning board about and to pull the development community in as well to get some feedback from them also. Some of them include like maybe emergency access entrances instead of the fully paved. It would be something that would be all-weather surface, maybe gated, kind of like you see at, if you're familiar with Grayson's Creek that backs up to 581 there between Goldsboro and Nahunta. That one has an emergency access entrance, and there's one or two more in the county that do have those. Those are potentials. I've heard from one developer recently of the potential of maybe looking at wider entrances for certain larger subdivisions where, you might have a larger area that if there is an incident there, you may have more room to work with there. So like I said, those are things we could pull the development community in and talk to them about to see if there are some viable options there that would work. So.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, I think the issue is not as much the entrance part as it is when you get inside the subdivision, as far as on the emergency side of it. Right. I mean, I've spoken with Mr. Perry as well, and I understand the developer side of it, but there is also a turn lane is not required if the traffic count on that road is less. Is it 3,000 or 4,000?
That's right,
a day?
3,000.
So there's not, at the time of installation, so I mean, of course, I'm as impatient as anybody, so I'd rather put a turn lane in, so you ain't got to stop, but that's but for safety issues, we just need to make sure we keep the safety issue in check. But, we're in the same, our family's kind of in the same situation. We got some property that's landlocked, and we don't have but one entrance in. And I spoke with Barry about this yesterday. In our situation, it could be, and it's not just us, there's probably 60 owners in that block, that 800 acres. If not, there might be more than that. But there's only one way in. And like Barry was saying, if the first one beats you to the punch, if you want to develop it, not us, but our granny youngins, you're kind of the first one that gets the development done the way it's written that's the only one that's going to be able to develop it. And so we just need to kind of think long term. And I know everything can be fixed down the road, but we don't need to. But like Chairman Aycock said, both of them's got valid points.
Right.
You know, emergency service wise and developer wise.
Yeah, we definitely see that. So we'll be glad to look at both sides and get the board back together and see if there's any options that would work.
I just, sure, I just don't, I mean, I want to make sure the safety element is there. I mean, regardless of cost and everything, I mean, you know, can't put a cost on a life.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if doing things this way will save a life at the end of the day, it may be a minute, it may be 2 minutes, but that could save a life. It's worth it. You know what I mean? And as far as a developer, I mean, if you have 100 lots out there and something's costing you $200,000 extra to do, I mean, you're charging each person maybe, you know, $1,000, $2,000 or something, so a piece to get it done. So it's not like you can't make your money back, you know what I mean? So it's going to equal out either way, because you're not going to lose money, because you're still going to sell that, you're going to go up on that price a little bit, which if a person moving in, that's something that they're gaining, because you're gaining another access point. You're gaining more safety. You know what I mean? So it's not like, well, I don't want to pay for that, but they're gaining something out of it. So I don't think that we need to make a lot of changes. And if we do make some changes, the safety still needs to be there. You know, and that's the main thing. We can't worry about cost on every single thing, and it's always an issue about money when that could be a life. And that's the most important thing, not money.
Right. That's understandable. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I had Barry send me this, and I don't know if this is all of them, but there's subdivisions in the county that were, I guess, is this all on Barry, do you think, or is it just there could be some more?
There may be a few more, but those are the ones, that's most all of them.
These are the ones that's got single, that's in the county, not in the ETJ.
Right.
There's 20 subdivisions with 75 or more lots in the county with one entrance. And, I'm gonna kind of go through a few of them just so y'all might recognize some of them. Is Grayson's Creek, which is out on 581, which one you was just talking about. Cherry Grove, which is on Bell Road. Mallard Point is on Hennett Road. Whispering Woods, which is off 111. Mears Bluff is across the street, but that's in the ETJ as of Whispering Woods was done way back.
It was done, yeah, Whispering Woods was done when it was in the county.
Right, exactly. The Reach, which is off of Perkins Road, Glen Laurel, off of Dall Pate, North Landon. Where's North Landon at? Anyway, Planters Ridge off of Waymore Drive. Sun Ridge is off of Truvine. Brantwood off of 13 North. Vincent Manor off of New Hope Road. Hunters Creek off of Central Heights Road. Willow Pond, not familiar. Walnut Point off of Beston. Deerwood off the backside of it's off of Dollartown. Spring Forest. Pine Grove Acres. I'm not. Where's that one at?
That is, I think that's down in the Dudley area.
Okay, it's got 150 lots. Twin Creeks, Windspread, and Sleepy Creek. So, I mean, yeah, we've got subdivisions in the, that's just something to kind of give you an idea of what the actual size subdivision we're talking about. So, what is the average subdivision size? I mean, when I say the average, what's the one that you see mostly? What I'm getting at is this really going to be a big issue, or is this going to be?
Typically, we don't see many subdivisions over 100 at this point. The issue is we might see, for example, the one on Aycock Birthplace Road, where you might have 70, 80, or 90 lots with stub outs for potential development or expansion. And that's where you might run into problems where you might have another phase 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road on adjacent property, and then that might kick it into the category. But typically, we see on average much less than 100. I'd say probably more in the 50 range. We don't see the large, like Gander Lake with over 200 lots. You know, you don't see those often, but I think some of the concern is the ones that might develop, and then you have property behind it where you might expand in the future. So,
Well, I mean, a lot of people are going to, because of the cost factor, it's going to, or landowners are going to develop in the front and then leave like a 100-foot lot open to the 400 acres behind it.
Right.
You know, because it's cheaper to develop the first part of it. So a lot of this stuff has got to kind of come in on the design stage as much as the ordinance provides. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
And then after that public hearing, again, the new business, we'll have the sewer rate discussion, and Kendall is here. And again, I appreciate the work of Commissioner Barbara Aycock. Janice did a lot of work on this. Chip, Kendall, am I leaving out somebody? Allison as well. So, but if you want, we can go over that during the regular meeting if you would like. And then we go to consent agenda, and we'll turn it to Ms. Allison for budget amendments.
Okay, your first budget amendment, Ken's on page 40, I believe it is, for the detention center. We're requesting to appropriate $9,018.92 to pay a required insurance deductible out of the jail line item. Human Resources, we are requesting to anticipate and appropriate $240. These are for fees collected and incurred for the Art of Healthy Living Wellness Program that was done with our Wellness Office and Cooperative Extension. This was an employee program. For the Sheriff's Office, they are anticipating and appropriating an additional $15,118.48. This is in the federal seized property line items and must be spent in accordance with those guidelines. They are allocating it to capital outlay for equipment. You have a budget amendment for Wayne Net. This budget amendment covers all of the revenues and expenditures to date, and we do anticipate receiving some additional revenues throughout the year. They will be moved over to the general fund. As you all know, Wayne Net was closed down as a county department. I believe it was the end of July. But we did incur some additional expenditures as part of that closing out, so this budget amendment captures those final expenditures and revenues.
There will be a few more expenditures. As long as they're still collecting revenue, there'll be an expenditure for the 4% we pay. So there is, less than $1,000 coming in a month, just, various deposits for that. So there will be another budget amendment at the end of the year, but it will be attached to revenue because we have collected more revenue than what we needed to pay for the expenses.
So this is not coming out of general fund?
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I might inquire, did we not have in our budget to cover the salaries and overtime and all these expenses that were in our current budget?
We did not know, because we did not know when they were closing down, we decided just to go ahead and budget it this way. And then once we had actual figures coming in, because remember, one time we talked about a 6-month closeout, then a 3-month closeout, right, and it ended up being a 2-month closeout. So we really did not budget. We just put everything into EMS. And now we're just trying to separate it back out for the accounting purposes.
But we did, in fact, make provisions in EMS for these fees. So would we not?
No, we did not.
We did
For
not?
revenue, yes. We did set aside some.
Not for Wayne Net.
Okay.
So Wayne Net was a separate fund. It was a separate enterprise fund.
We just rolled
But the
everything.
salaries associated with the operation of Wayne Net, did we not
We
increase?
rolled that back into EMS.
We did
No,
roll it into
No, we
EMS.
did not.
We did not.
We did not budget anything for Wayne Net originally.
Right.
Because there was so much going back and forth between what the end date was on the department. And so at that time, it was recommended to us to just do a budget amendment mid-year once the operation had closed down to account for the cumulative expenditures and revenues.
Well, now that is totally out of character for you.
It is, but if you tell me to do something, I have to do it.
Did we anticipate that the figure was gonna be this high, though? And I know it's just like throwing darts. I
It
mean,
was
we
throwing darts. It was throwing
really
darts.
didn't know what.
We didn't know the closeout, we didn't know what would transfer, but it was throwing darts.
But the main point is this is not coming out of fund balance.
Right, yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, most of it's salary.
Well, could I inquire just a little bit further, and that is in fact the 115,000 in user fees, is that all of the user fees that we in fact collected?
No, sir.
All right, well, where are the other user fees going?
Well, we only needed this amount to
I
make it
agree.
balance.
Well, where did you put the other?
It will fall out into that fund, which will be moved to the general fund at the end of the year.
Right.
After we keep collecting.
Can you give me an anticipated amount of how
I
much
think it
you
was
collected?
144,000.
An additional 140?
Total.
Okay.
And
So
that's
you-
a really good guess.
A total of 144, not
Correct.
additional.
But she does anticipate that we'll receive some additional for the rest of the year.
But that'll go into EMS revenue.
But it was a total of 144,000 collected, not an additional, because he said additional.
No.
I did say that.
144.
I was trying to bait you.
I understand what you're doing.
Okay, good enough, thank you.
Thank you.
But again, it was very confusing on how to budget, especially not knowing when it was going to be closed out. But we did close it out really as quickly as possible and moving forward.
Yeah, I'm just shocked that, that our budget officer would not put anything into EMS to cover these salaries.
It's not my preferred method of budgeting.
Okay, good enough.
Your next budget amendment is for the staff attorney's office. They are anticipating an additional $20,000 in revenue and appropriating that to overdue taxes and interest. They've exceeded their projected collections for the year, and this budget amendment will cover the overcollected revenues and expenditures for the year.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could give an attaboy to our staff attorney.
And you are gonna put this in fund balance?
Yeah,
just
well,
kidding.
yes, whatever's left from the expenditures in his line item, it will fall out in general fund.
Oh, now he's
Yes.
spent it. Oh, my goodness.
Your next budget amendment is for EMS, which is now in your general fund. And they are asking to appropriate $67,325 in fund balance for additional cost related to service and maintenance and repairs and maintenance of vehicles. So a couple of explanations on this. The service and maintenance contract is related to the linen contract they have or had, which exceeded their cost that they anticipated for this year. They have since negotiated with a new provider who we anticipate will be, a cost savings for the county. But that will not be realized this year. The second piece of this is for repairs and maintenance of vehicles. And they exceeded the line item that they anticipated for the year, and this was due to several vehicles that needed new motors and other expensive repairs that just couldn't be predicted.
I got a question on that. On the first one, on the linen part, I thought the hospital took care of that.
No, not anymore. No longer.
We are now contracted with the same provider that the hospital uses, but that is a cost that we bear.
Yeah,
But the hospital spent, I'm telling how many millions of dollars on a state-of-the-art laundry. We're not utilizing that laundry anymore
They
at the
closed
hospital?
it down.
Had been several years.
About 3 or 4 years ago, they stopped that
I would say
service.
more like 5 years ago.
What? Okay.
It ended up costing the hospital more than it would if they just outsourced it.
Really?
You know,
But they stopped us from using the linen at the hospital, at least 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
That got very heated discussion also.
I know the answer to that question, just had to ask.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm more concerned about the $50,000 budget for vehicle maintenance and repairs. And we've got the man here. Can you give us some indication how these motors are costing us $50,000?
Can I answer before he does? We bought the wrong brand.
Evidently, what brand did we buy?
Ford.
Those MLS go out. He'd probably be asking you for some more this year. We've had transmissions go out, engines go out, and then they're expensive. An engine, put in an MLS, $5,000-$6,000 to change the engine out. Transmissions, $2,000-$3,000, and they've had a lot of them this year. Had a whole lot of them this year, so, yeah.
Were they diesel engines or gas engines?
Those were the 5.0 diesel that just suck.
Right.
And we've gone,
You even got the press laughing on that one. Quote him on that.
but we've Kendall, am I not correct? We've gone back to the gas engines.
Chevrolet.
Yes, all gas engines.
And GMC?
Chevrolet, yeah.
Ones left at all, obviously do, they're the ones he's going to replace this year, but I don't know if we got any left. I hope we don't anyway. That's a bad idea, put a diesel engine in the ambulance.
Yeah, crank it up and wide open.
Yeah, they're bad.
Allison, on this EMS, I noticed he mentioned about COVA, because of COVA, the reason some of the wear and tear on the engines. Mm-hmm. Do we not have any COVA funds left to cover these charges instead of using fund balance?
Well, I guess if you looked at it this way, we used the bulk of our CARES funding to offset some of the public safety and health-related salaries. That will give us a savings in our fund balance that we had not anticipated for the year. So indirectly, yes, this will be offset by that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
But, Mr. Chairman, but how can that be related to COVID? I mean, if the engines wear out, I don't know how that has anything to do with COVID.
The same person come up with that brainstorm bright idea that said the trash on the side of the road was worse because of COVID. Now explain that one to me.
I will say, we did ask for additional information that was not submitted to the board, and so in looking at that, what they were actually referencing on that is they had expected to receive 2 remounts in the 1920 fiscal year, but because of the delays due to COVID of these remounts, they had to make the ones they had last a little longer.
Oh, okay.
That's what they meant by that.
Okay. All right.
So your next budget amendment is for the health department. They are requesting to reallocate $392,450 from professional services lab to other staff time. And this is a part of the COVID enhancing detection activities that they have received. These are grants from the State Department of Public Health, and these are grants that have specific activities tied to their, measurable outcomes. So they are reallocating those line items to where they see that they will need those. So this is not new money.
This is a washout.
Yes, sir. This is not new money. This is reallocation.
But it is grant dollars?
Yes, sir. A lot of the health department's revenues most of their revenues are grant dollars, federal or state. Your next budget amendment is also for the health department. They have received additional grant funds for the COVID vaccination program. This is in the amount of $52,041. They are anticipating to use that in staff time and other medical supplies. And this is actually through the Women and Children's Health Immunization Branch. For the detention center, they are requesting to reallocate $80,000 from their salaries and wages line item to overtime. This is due to vacancies they've had in positions at the detention center. So they do have some lapsed salaries, but they've had to use a lot of overtime, so they are reallocating those funds. You have a budget from the Health Department totaling $108,609.62. This is just an accounting change to move it from their opioid action plan grant to grant revenues. This is strictly just for accounting purposes, reallocation. For services on aging, you have a reallocation in the amount of $9,812. They are moving this from extra help to regular part-time and the related retirement contribution. So the difference in part-time or extra help, where you see the money being moved from, is that that line item does not have any benefits associated with it. The regular part-time line item does. We have to pay retirement on that because they exceed a certain number of hours for the year, and they also do accumulate some prorated vacation and sick leave. And this is for a part-time CNA position. For the sheriff's office, they are anticipating and appropriating an additional $501.04. This is for the controlled substance program. For the health department, you will see that they are reallocating several line items here, and I will give you a brief explanation. Typically, we do have a lot of budget amendments around this time of year. We like for the departments to really review their line items and do some cleanup and make sure that their expenditures for the year look appropriate, because the budget reports that we're going to present to you all cut off at February 28th. So these budget amendments will be entered as of that date, and that way you have the most accurate information that you're basing your budget decisions on. So here they are reallocating several of their operating line items. Your next budget amendment is for the health department. They are reallocating their COVID infection prevention funds, totaling $14,259.28. This is not new money. It was originally budgeted in other medical supplies, and they have reallocated as they see the need in different operating line items. For inspections, they are anticipating additional revenues of $5,000 and also reallocating existing line items. This is to also true up their operating costs for the year in credit card fees and office supplies.
Mr. Chairman, I saw this and was somewhat perplexed by it, and that is that there would be an additional $8,000 worth of credit card fees.
Yes, sir.
The problem I have with that is that the county charges each builder when they receive a permit and pay for it by credit card, they charge them a convenience fee or whatever. Is that correct?
That was the intention of the board. If I don't know if you remember, because I haven't updated you on this in a while, but earlier in the year, I think it was around fall, we have been pursuing with our credit card merchant, our credit card vendor, having this capability to pass on convenient fees. And we were told when COVID hit that they had to freeze all activities related to that and were not able to implement. And since that time, I've been given the same answer. So in anticipation of this budget amendment, I've contacted them again, and basically they understand that if this is not implemented by July 1, we will be looking for a new vendor.
Good for you.
Wait a minute. You mean we operated a whole year without implementing a convenience fee?
Yes, sir.
Because the credit card company would not allow us to put that on there?
They did not. So I think there are two things that are going on, and this is my observations. I can't tell you for sure this is what it is. I think this bank had a merger at the same time that COVID hit, and I think that between those two things, they could not get the software updates done to the machines to allow us to be able to do this.
And just to correct something, when you have they call a merger and the name changes, that you ain't been merged, you have been bought out.
And I've been very frustrated with this, but that's why the only other option I had left is basically to say, we're just going to have to start looking for other options.
Well, why don't we just do that? Amen. Why don't we just do it? If they have cost us a tremendous amount of money.
I agree.
So, I mean, why would they benefit from that? Why don't we just go ahead and find another supplier?
Or give the staff the authority to look at another one.
Well, we need to do something quickly
We
because
will do that.
that was part of our budget, and that is that we would in fact pass on our cost
Right.
of using credit cards. And I just can't imagine that would be a problem. Now, let me go for a little further here. Wait a minute. This is not making sense.
Okay.
And here's why. I recall a citizen complaining to me about the fact that they paid their property tax by credit card and was charged a convenience fee.
You are charged a convenience fee. I was just about to say the same as that. So how are you charged convenience fee there, but not charged convenience fee
That's right.
somewhere else?
Because we have two different vendors. So our tax billing system is through a totally separate company. And that is done all through a separate company than what we have for the county on the rest of our credit card machines. But you are absolutely right. There is a credit card convenience fee, and I think even possibly a debit card convenience fee on our tax collections.
So if we have one, so we can't use that vendor for
We
anything
can
else?
look at it.
No. We're not going to look at it anymore. This has gone on for a year or more. I mean,
Yeah, but
make
you
a
would-
decision.
You would think that you could actually combine the two and actually get a better deal.
It depends because, to be honest with you, we probably need to look at our banking contract. I think our credit card services has been tied to our banking contract, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
my goodness. Isn't that nice?
Well, I agree with, I've already made that comment one time, so.
In the tax office, that online, that's done online.
Right.
All these machines that we're talking about here are done in the office when you come to the place where you're purchasing the service.
Yeah, but all of the credit card companies has got an online portal, I would think. At least the ones that I've got.
It-
Anyway, I mean, we can go on and on with that, but I mean,
we'll research what our options are.
We'll do that.
Mr. Chairman, Allison, how much do you guesstimate that it's cost us?
I'll have to look. I really do not have, I don't have any idea right now.
Send a
We
bill
can
to
get that.
BB&T.
I will get that information for you, though.
Okay.
Your next budget amendment is for the 911 Capital Project Fund. This is a reallocation of grant funds that we received on the 911 building. And this was done like earlier in the year, but in doing our cleanup on this project, we're getting ready to hopefully close it out, and we're doing some reconciliation with the 911 board. We realized that we needed a budget amendment to reallocate the funds to match the latest grant allocation. So this is not new funds, this is not adding to our grant, this is just simply matching up the line items to where the grant eligible line items were approved.
And I do want to thank Allison and also Brian Taylor and Tina. It basically was a full day and a half of trying to sit down and to look at the grant and what was submitted and making sure that we did not have to do any reimbursement back. So I do want to thank Allison and Tina and Brian for that as well.
And I think that's the last budget amendment I have for you. That's a lot.
Thank you.
Next is motion to adopt Resolution 2021-7, resolution amending the Wayne County Personnel Policy. If you can see the memo that we have in here, when we were doing our certification policy, the positions or the certifications for tax collector, deputy tax collector, and assistant tax collector were inadvertently left off of the list. And again, we have vetted these. They are 2 and 3 years required for service to get these certifications. There is continuing education that is required annually to get these certifications. So vetting this with respect to the other certifications we have, we felt like that they needed to be added back to our policy.
Why did they slip through the crack?
No idea. No idea. But Alan did bring this to our attention, and we did go back with HR and vetted all this, and they are really valid to receive the increases.
Okay. I'm fine with putting it back on, but my concern is why did it fall through the crack?
Right. I'm not sure. Not sure.
So is this retroactive? What is this?
If we have had people that have been certified in these since the policy has been approved and updated, we'll make it retroactive.
And that being how far back?
Because about a year ago that we changed and revised the policy to look at all of our certifications throughout the county.
Okay.
And then number 3 is a motion to establish a public hearing on April 6, 2021 at 9:30 a.m. in the Commissioners' meeting room on the 4th floor to receive public comments on a request to amend various sections of the Wayne County zoning and subdivision ordinances, case A-21-01, to comply with recent updates to General Statute 160D. I'll turn that to Barry.
Okay. Let me start by saying that I can promise you there are no new regulations or restrictions in this amendment. So there is quite a bit of change, but let me say that our statute, or what we call our enabling statute, that gives us the ability to have zoning regulations and subdivision regulations, that has changed. So originally, counties fell under 153A, General Statute 153A. That has been changed, and basically that is being eliminated and now becoming 160D. And so they've taken the city statutes and the county statutes and have kind of merged those together so that we're all kind of working off the same set of statutes, and they've made clarifications to a lot of those. And so we do have to amend our ordinance to reflect those changes. So I'll just go over those really quickly. There's quite a few changes where we're changing the 153A to the 160D, which is just basically a standard change. We do have where we are changing, or not really changing, but we're putting in there where there's a 30-day appeal period from the time of written determination of assent. That is something that has always been done and has always been in the statute, which doesn't have it in our ordinance, but we've always worked off of the statute in addition to our ordinance, so it's not anything new that we're doing with that. So we have a couple of places where we're making that adjustment. Another change in the ordinance is where we are actually noting in here where we're posting the property for a rezoning. If you're rezoning your property, and I tell you this usually when we do have a public hearing, that we posted a property before the meeting so that people who live around there will know that there's a rezoning coming up. We've done that for many, many years in this county. It just wasn't necessarily technically in our ordinance, so we're just making sure that's reflected there. And then further on in 70-5, section 70-75, with our bond section, we're adding our financial improvements or guarantees. We do have a section we're adding for surety bonds. The statutes now say that we have to allow for those, so we're actually putting that in there. You typically won't see a bond or any sort of guarantee because you do require as a board that, and we would require that developers submit a built standards letter from DOT. It says that we require that the streets be built up front and certified that they do meet DOT standards. So typically you won't see a guarantee, which is basically where someone wants to go ahead and start building homes before the streets end. And then we have to make sure that we have that money from the developer in case we have to put in the streets, but you typically will not see that. But in the future, if you ever did allow that, we just have to make sure that the surety bond is in there as a potential. And then the last change, which is on the last page of what I had sent you, this is the largest. There's two things here. One is that an exemption for our subdivision ordinance. If you have a property and it is in your will that your children get that property or that it's split in your will, Of course, that is an exemption, and we have to recognize that so that way, if you do pass, or when you pass and you do have a will that states that, they can record those lots as your will states, and they can receive those lots without any interference from local government. The other thing is, the last item is regarding subdivisions as well. It's a new, what I call exception or exemption as well, that if you have over 5 acres of land, you can split that into 3 lots. And as long as you have an access or dedicated access for that, you can do that. The reason this was put in the statutes is basically jurisdictions, a lot of jurisdictions, especially counties, were starting to require that all lots have road frontage, direct road frontage. And what they were finding was, in Commissioner Gurley's example, where he might own a tract that's off the road, if he wanted to say split out a lot for someone, a lot of jurisdictions were not allowing that because he has no direct road frontage. So this statute basically opens the door for folks who may not have that road frontage, where they can do several lots without being basically hindered from that. It does give them that ability to do that. So, and again, all these things we have been doing because they have been in the statute in one form or another. There may be some clarification in some of those, but none of this is new to Wayne County. It's been done for years. We just need to make sure that it is reflected in our ordinance by July 1st. That is the deadline for that. So that's why we're bringing this before you today. And we're just asking that you hold a public hearing next month so that we can move forward.
Mr. Chairman, we don't have, Barry, we don't have anything in our existing regulations or rules that's going to contradict any of this. It's just pretty much, other than what we've got in the red, is just adding to
That's right.
the existing and just changing the number from 139, I think 139 to 160 or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's just adding to the ordinance and just changing reference numbers. But there will be no conflict.
And when you first started, you used the word "they." Clarify who they are.
When I said they, I probably was referring to the state.
Okay.
Yep. The state amended the statutes, so we're now having to make those changes. But like I said, a lot of those changes were clarification changes to make sure everybody's working off the same page. But as usual, that trickles down, and then we have to change our local codes. So.
And that's a perfect example for the general public to know. Probably about 20% of what we conduct up here, we have control over. But they come in a whole lot, the word they. And so probably 80% of what goes on, this board really doesn't have a whole lot of say-so about it. Just, would that ratio be about what you would think, Mr. Parker, Mr. Honeycutt?
Very slight. We are an arm of state government. We are an arm of state government.
Mr. Chairman, if I could inquire on item 6 here, I think you referred to that being a tract of 5 acres.
Right.
But I don't see the 5 acres mentioned here.
Down in
It's C, 6C, the entire
Okay, I
area.
see C. Is greater than 5 acres.
Right, greater
So
than
a
5
5-acre tract could be divided into 3 lots.
Right.
And it'd be classified as a minor subdivision,
Right, or an exempt subdivision, that's right.
an exempt subdivision.
Minor subdivisions would go to our planning board, minor subdivisions would for review and approval. But in this case, it would just be staff approval. They would bring the plat in to staff and we would sign off on it.
Right, right. Okay, thank you.
there's
Barry,
one
would
thing
that read better if it would be greater than or equal to 5 acres? Or now it just says greater than 5 acres.
Well, the statute, greater than 5 acres is what the statute limits us to, so it had to be greater than. So it could, technically, I think I said 5 or more, but it's technically greater than 5, so.
Greater than 5.
You're right.
So like mini farm type deals is what we're talking about.
Yeah, mini farms, that's
Right,
right.
yeah.
That's a terminology that's used often.
Okay.
I saw something in here, and I'm probably fixing to show my ignorance, but now I can't find it. I'll get with you after.
Yeah, sounds good.
Any other questions for Barry? Thank you, Barry.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think that that showing how few changes had to be made shows what good jobs the current planner and the two former planners have been doing with the planning board to make sure that.
I would agree with you.
Exactly.
And then after consent agenda, we'll have public comments, county manager's report, board of commissioners committee reports, and I'm not sure if we have closed session today.
Not to my knowledge.
And then adjournment.
Does anyone else have anything to add to the agenda? If not, our pre-agenda meeting is over. Do I need a motion on that?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, then we got about 10 minutes before the 9 o'clock meeting, so let's take a break.